This conference will now be recorded.
All set, Lon.
Okay. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for showing up on this Friday. This is really our first budget of the new fiscal year, and a lot of it's stuff that we've really been dealing with already. So hopefully this will go quickly. So I want to call this meeting to order on July 24th, 2020 at 9:04 a.m. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion to approve. This is Brenda.
Hey, Brenda. Second?
Second, Steve Meyer.
Oh, hey, Steve. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody want to abstain? Okay, good. So our first order of business is to ask for public comments. Do we have any? No, not hearing. And then our next item is the consent agenda. And I think we have 3 items on the consent agenda, beginning with the meeting minutes. And then we have a draft of progress to target memos for 2020, which helps, it's really deal with a performance review process. So Brian, is that you?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Lonnie. So usually just stepping back, giving some background to members who may be new to the board. The July board meeting, what we try to do is look back at the prior fiscal year. So what we've provided is a draft memo on the progress to targets for fiscal year 2020. What some of you old hats might see is that we actually converted from the sector-based memos, residential, commercial, industrial, institutional, to the new structure of the organization, incentive programs and financing programs. So what this does is this provides a report out to the board on our tentative, how we did to the fiscal year. We'll be spending the coming months looking at the numbers and wrapping that up as we get into the audit, which will come back to the board in October. And then what you'll see is these memos come back in a red line with any revisions to the board that then finalizes the numbers for the fiscal year and puts them into the audit. But what we use them for is this is usually the merit review period for the organization. So July, August, we use these as one part of the staff assessment process. There are 3 pieces to a staff assessment. One is how well we did to the targets. The second is how well we managed our financial resources, to budget the investments we make. And then third is a 360 review. So the staff will actually get across the organization a review. So those are the 3 things that come into the merit. So this memo is draft. We're going to actually go through it. You'll hear each of the team members and our partners go through the progress on each of these areas. And then the third resolution here is with regards to the governance compliance reporting. We always do this as well in July. And this is like a look back on all of the board meetings and all of the committee meetings with respect to attendance, how well we did, the quorums, the resolutions. You'll also see in that memo that we build out the ethics statements of financial interests. And thank you, everybody, for getting all that in on time. So you'll see those sorts of things. And literally, this report is almost verbatim into our comprehensive annual financial report in October. So we lift it as part of the governance report out for the October meeting. So those are the 3 items on the consent agenda. And once you are fine with those, I will go through the remaining bullets after the resolutions.
Would you like a motion, Brian?
Do you need a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yeah, resolutions 1 through 3.
This is Matt. I move approval of resolutions 1 through 3.
Thank you, Matt. A second?
Second, Binu Chandy.
Binu, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Excellent. Okay,
All right, great for that. So there are a couple of other documents that we included in the consent agenda. Let me just kind of work through them. The Green Bank Impact Report is really just a quick snapshot summary of the fiscal year. So it literally just takes all the information in the prior memos and puts them into table format. So just an abbreviated version. The request for approvals of PSAs over $75,000. So just again, for some of the new members of the board, per our operating procedures, any professional services agreement that the Green Bank engages in that is over $75,000 has to go through the chair, a recommendation from the staff to the chair to review those transactions, or it can be approved by the board. So as part of our fiscal year budget process that we went through in June, there were a number of strategic partners that we identified in our budget. Those partners essentially get renewed in this fiscal year. And then over the course of the fiscal year, there are PSAs that come up when they're over $75,000, as long as it's all consistent with the budget. Working with the chair, Alani, recommend a review and approval of those transactions. So what you're seeing here is a best practice. This is actually Commissioner Smith. She recommended this about 2017-ish, I think, that year. She thought it would be good for us to simply report out the types of transactions that she was reviewing and approving on an annual basis. So that's what you see in that memo. Again, it's just a report out. And then the third bullet there, the transactions under 500,000 and no more in aggregate than $1 million. So over the years, working with the deployment committee, the staff has the ability to approve of transactions, CPACE projects, commercial solar PPA projects, all those projects that are consistent with our comprehensive plan and budget. Staff can approve of transactions as long as they are under $500,000 and no more in aggregate than $1 million. So what you're seeing is a memo that we use to report out. I think in this case we had one transaction, and this just kind of keeps us moving rather than having to schedule special meetings for review and approval of transactions. As long as it's consistent with our comprehensive plan and budget, the staff can review and approve them. The board can also request from us that they take a look at the materials that the staff use to make those decisions. We have all the documentation behind it. It's the standard process, the same documentation we use to present to the board. So this is just a memo to report out. What happens is once we report out, it clears the queue and the staff can then go and approve more transactions as we continue forward. And then the fourth bullet there, restructurings and write-offs under 100,000 and no more in aggregate than 500. So this is the other end of the scale here. So this is a report out on staff approved restructuring transactions. So as long as they are under $100,000 and no more in aggregate than 500,000, the staff can approve of restructurings. We put before the board in April, as you might recall, a different process with regards to restructuring transactions for COVID. And what you see in this memo is 4 CPACE transactions that have been restructured, where we've essentially taken some of the near-term payments and put them to the back end of the PACE assessment to give some relief to those organizations that are using our financing. So knock on wood, everything so far so good in terms of managing through COVID. So yeah, I wanted to spend a little bit more time there because I know we have new board members, and this is kind of what happens usually in July as we do some of these kind of report outs, and I just wanted you all to have a sense of those things. It's happy to take any questions, comments. All right. We're okay to move forward then, Lonnie.
Okay, so we've already approved the consent agenda, right?
That's right. That's right. Yep.
Okay, no, we're just looking at it and thinking, oh, do I meticulously need to go back and approve every aspect of it? So. Okay. moving on to item number 4. I think this is Celia, incentive programs, updates, and recommendations.
Perfect.
Yes.
Celia, perfect. Great.
I'm here. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Lonnie. And
Good
Brian.
morning.
Good morning. Excellent. So first, on this first slide, I wanted to provide an overall update. Again, as Brian mentioned, this is now one of our business units, and this includes RCIP, Smarty, and Solar for All. So overall, for the incentive programs, we met all of the targets from the perspective of the number of projects, and in fact exceeded targets. And just wanted to mention, for one of the programs, the Solar for All, we were slightly under target with respect to capital deployed and capacity. We'll speak to that on a later slide, but part of that reason is because we did approve a smaller system size to be used in that program. But in terms of the number of customers served, you can see that we exceeded targets even for that program. Next slide, please. So for the RCIP program, again, our residential solar incentive program, for those who are a little bit newer to the board, we exceeded all of the targets for RCIP, and that is despite the COVID shutdowns that had their biggest impact in April and May. So we had very strong volume in RCIP through the third quarter, at least through mid-March. And then we started seeing some recovery in June. That allowed the program to exceed the target despite the slowdowns. So we're still recovering, but we're doing a little bit over 5 megawatts a month at this point, which is not too bad given the state of things with the pandemic. So we finished FY20 with volume that was over 60 megawatts, which is very high historically from the perspective of the program, and it's comparable to last fiscal year, which was our highest volume since the inception of the program. What allowed for some recovery with COVID was the solar industry adapting sales and installation practices, and also municipalities starting to adapt permitting and inspection practices. There's still recovery that needs to happen, but hopefully the industry will continue to manage the situation and hang in there. In terms of RCIP overall as a program, we're now, I noted here 332 megawatts. It's actually slightly more since we're most of the way into July. And what that means is we have about 15 megawatts left until we hit the 350 megawatt target, the statutory target for RCIP. And so we're estimating that we could reach the statutory target for RCIP as early as October. So we'll see what happens with that. And then we reached a total investment milestone of 1.25 billion for the program in total. In terms of policy developments that impact residential solar, the value of DER study that was required to be done by Deep and Pura has been released as a draft. So we're going to be engaged in seeing the results of that starting next week. We have been working very hard, led by Brian Garcia, on a proposal for a battery storage incentive program to be submitted to Pura by the end of this month. That would do a lot to support the solar market as well. And it would help reduce peak load for all ratepayers. So that's a very exciting proposal, and hopefully we'll be able to administer a residential battery storage program in the future. And then lastly, I mentioned that RCIP is going to reach its target soon. as you know from having approved our proposal in a prior board meeting, we are encouraging policymakers to extend RSIP by 100 megawatts. So we'll see what happens if a legislative session is put in place later this fall. Any questions?
Celia, this is Lonnie. I'm wondering, are you getting any feedback in terms of the legislature coming back to deal with it? I mean, it feels like they just want to get out.
Lonnie, this is Brian. Yeah, so they are reconvening, and they're reconvening around really specific issues in the coming next week. And any other kind of committee issues aren't going to be taken up until possibly the fall or November, December of this year. We did have a great conversation with Representative Arconti, who's the co-chair of the E&T committee, who's very supportive of this, but it's likely that we will hit our 350 megawatts before they reconvene. So where we left it with him was we will communicate with him on a monthly basis how the market is doing, so he's aware of it. And it may be, Celia, that you might want to speak to approving more than 350 megawatts because we have attrition that usually happens. That may get us into November, but they're very supportive of it. They understand the rationale. As we talked about in April, we worked with Deep and Pura on revising the legislation. We had a conversation with the governor's office. We took that legislation to the E&T lead, in this case, Representative Arconti, and he was supportive. But they're all under a weird timeline in terms of what they can talk about in session.
It's Lonnie again. Have you sat down with Matt Ritter?
No, we haven't.
Or Zoomed with Matt. That might be helpful. I mean, that really establishes priorities, and he gets this stuff. And we're talking about a program that works, that's been robust and that's foundational. So that might be good for you to have that conversation.
Excellent. We'll flag that and work with Matt on it.
Yeah, thank you for your feedback on that, Lonnie. That's very helpful. We did put together information showing that other states have made sure that they've provided continuity with respect to their solar programs. So we're hoping that helps make the argument as well.
Well, I think in all the work that you've done, Celia, that everybody's done has been so important because it really shows, that this is part of our economic recovery, and that this program, and a lot of folks who are not in the whole energy game, this falls out of their brain. So it's always good for them to be reminded that it's part of economic recovery and jobs.
Yes, absolutely. And as Brian said, we may be able to buy ourselves an extra month by approving a little bit over the 350, because we usually can count on a cancellation rate of, say, 5 to 10%. So our program is experienced in dealing with that. So we'll figure out sort of how to handle that end of program time period. So, okay, great. Thank you for that. And shall we move on to Smarty?
And I just want to announce Brian Farnham's on the line. I've been on for a few minutes of the session, so sorry about that.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, let's proceed forward. Carrie, are you there?
Yeah, and Joe Buonanata is going to take Smarty for us, and I'll chime in as needed.
Good morning, Joe. Good morning, Carrie. Great. Go.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So nice to speak with you all. I'll provide the update on Smarty loan looking back at the last fiscal year. Happy to report that Smarty did exceed all of our targets in terms of closed loans, capital deployed, and megawatt capacity. And we are excited for what's to come in this next fiscal year. To help us along the way, about just over a year ago now, last July of 2019, we launched a new web platform to help with project management, both on the organization side, the lender side, and the contractor side. Our new platform called the National Green Energy Network, or ENGINE. So Connecticut was the first state, the first energy program in the country to launch on this platform. Michigan Saves became the second state in in the fall of 2019, and we have at least one other and several other state energy offices who are interested in joining that platform in the coming months. So a great tool to streamline the various energy programs. The board did approve the reclassification of 2 health and safety measures under SMARTY, asbestos and mold remediation last fiscal year. Those are now standalone measures that can be financed up to $25,000, and those were presented to the board because of contractors' requests to address health and safety barriers. We've had only a small handful of those loans over the last fiscal year. We intended to do a push with the Department of Public Health to help identify contractors, but unfortunately, due to the COVID pandemic, we halted that, and we'll plan to pick that up hopefully in the near future. But it's a nice option to have for homeowners who are interested in doing that. So we're happy to have those 2 measures, those 2 important measures on our list of eligible measures. Looking at COVID specifically and the impacts on the program, Brian Garcia and the team hosted a series of webinars and had informational resources available to contractors regarding the PPP loan. And in advance of those, we identified several of our SMARTY lenders. We partner with 9 banks and credit unions, and about half of those were actively offering PPP loans, and were willing to help our clean energy contractor partners access those funds. So we were happy to make those and continue those partnerships. COVID itself had varying impacts on SMARTY performance. Volume did drop in March and April, but we saw the volume get back up in May and June. Specifically in June of 2020, we had our highest volume closed loan month of the fiscal year. We closed 91 loans in June, which was the highest of the fiscal year. Really, it's all been the program's been buoyed by steady HVAC performance. That industry was impacted less than other partners like home performance, insulation and windows contractors, and solar contractors, being both happening in the winter and spring, so the colder months where folks still needed their water heaters or their furnaces or their boilers replaced, and the HVAC industry being deemed essential by the state. Those contractors were able to still remain in work and submit projects through the SMARTY loan. Loan performance, we didn't have much of an impact in terms of deferral or forbearance requests. Our lenders all did allow for and continue to allow for borrowers to request deferrals, but we had about 1%, less than 1% of the portfolio in a deferral, 90-day deferral status. We had intended, I know I spoke to the board back in January, we intended to launch a 2.99 special financing offer through SMARTY on April 1st to support the deployment of heat pump technologies, battery storage, and electric vehicle charging stations. We ultimately decided to postpone that from April 1st, and we launched it on July 1st to support economic recovery as the state's clean energy economy reopened. So we're live with that. We're excited to see, especially heat pump projects come through on the ductless mini split, ducted air source heat pump side, and geothermal projects, and battery storage, and EV chargers to follow. Those take a little bit more, education for consumers. So we think that it'll be a little bit of a slower build for those 2 technologies, but we're live with those and happy to take any questions if there are any.
Joe, that was a great overview. Let me just make 2 quick comments, and then if members of the board have comments or questions, please weigh in. The first one was on the PPP loans. We did do a survey of the clean energy industry back in April on how well they were accessing the PPP loans, and this was round 1. And you all heard or might recall there were lots of stresses around the businesses having access to it, which is why they did PPP 2. We did get some recent results in our survey that we're now closing about a week ago. It looks like almost 100% of our contractors, except those who had losses last year, were able to access the PPP loan program. So we provided direct assistance, outreach, got our Smarty lenders. Joe just reached out to our lenders to really hold their hands and get them into the program. So that was really important to kind of stabilize their business. And then secondly, just for some of the new members on the board, so Joe and Carrie work with Inclusive Prosperity Capital. So this is a nonprofit that we co-created with Deep and the foundation, the Kresge Foundation. In the June board meeting, one of the strategic investments we made was in Inclusive Prosperity Capital. They administer several programs on our behalf and just do an exceptional job. This was part of our restructuring coming out of the sweeps in 2017, and we moved a number of our staff members from the Green Bank to this nonprofit. So Joe and Carrie used to work for the Green Bank. Now they work for IPC, which is they're scaling up our model to the nation, which is exciting. You can see the launched InGen, which is a national platform for Smarty loan-like activity. So just want to commend them and their team for just great work helping us deliver on our mission. So I just want to get that out.
Are there any questions or comments from board members?
This is Matt. I'll just say, it's all very impressive. There's been so much business dislocation because of COVID, and so I think those are great efforts to keep our constituency, if you will, on track and to give them the best shot of growing or at least weathering the storm. So great foresight as usual, guys and girls.
This is Steve Meyer. Just a quick question. What are the recent trends you've seen? You mentioned earlier that obviously the activities were impacted pretty dramatically April, May, and improved in June. What are we seeing now? What are you seeing, I should say?
Continued. Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Go ahead. I was just going to say we are seeing continued steady build of the HVAC projects as we move into cooling season. So or as we're in cooling season rather. So central air conditioning, heat pumps. That's really where the bulk of our volume is. Solar has always been slow the last 2 years, so we don't see a lot of those projects. But most of the contractors now with the Home Energy Solutions program through Energize Connecticut back online. Most of those contractors are now back to work, if not at full capacity, at just about full capacity.
That's great. Thank you.
I think for the quarter, we were down year over year about 20%, I think is where we netted the quarter, but that included the earlier months. So a steady build. And I just think it's going to take a little bit of time to get those home performance, insulation windows, other trades back. And we're hoping that the 299 offer generates some additional interest and activity to keep building that momentum.
That's great. Thank you.
Great.
So,
go ahead, Carrie. Go ahead, Carrie.
Yeah,
Thank
okay.
you.
Yeah, so this is Carrie O'Neill. I'm going to take the Solar for All with PosiGen update. Emily Basham unfortunately couldn't be with us this morning, and normally she would give it. So as Celia had indicated, on the project side, we just beat our targets in terms of customers served. We did have lower capital deployed in megawatt capacity. We always make assumptions in this program as to what the system size mix will be. There are 3 and now 4. A 4th standard system size has been offered. We did see the mix shift down to smaller system sizes, so that brought down the other 2 metrics. And that 3.7 kilowatt 4th system size was really intended to capture even smaller roof and home sizes, project sizes, as the Solar for All campaign, has been in the market in a couple of years and seeing additional opportunities there. Also provided some new flexibility to pair different lease sizes to allow for additional size combinations. One of the keys in this program is there are, standard system models or sizes that are offered to make it more efficient to address this more difficult part of the market. It makes for greater operating efficiencies. In terms of COVID-19 response, PosiGen was able to transition to remote sales and really One of the things that we've been just so impressed by is their ability to, continue with exceptional sales during COVID-19, including they had their highest sales month ever in June. And part of this speaks to just the compelling value proposition to folks who are really struggling with their electric bills and wanting to go solar in a way that doesn't require a credit check and what have you. So really responding well in the COVID-19 environment. And everybody's at home, right? And so they're really focused on their bills and seeing the increase in electric use. There was absolutely impact in installations due to COVID-19, but that's beginning to move again. The other thing that we were quite surprised by is the delinquency rate actually tightened up, and the collections actually tightened up during this period. And in talking to the staff at Posigen, and I think it intuitively makes sense, their view is customers are prioritizing this bill payment because they're seeing tangible energy savings, and they don't want those energy savings to go away in this period of, a lot of dislocation in their lives and perhaps in their income stream. So that was all good. The team led by Emily really has spent a lot of time, and Celia and many members of the team with Posigen to make sure this program, stays on track. And then just a couple other things in terms of other LMI initiatives. We are involved with 2 DOE grants that support solar and LMI households, and they also support things like the Green and Healthy Homes Project, where we're working with Department of Public Health and Department of Social Services to try to unlock public and private health sector dollars to help pay for health and safety issues that can't be remediated, or that need to be remediated before energy efficiency can be done. We're also working on a grant to take this Solar for All energy efficiency solar paired model to other states. And that second grant is really quite exciting. There's a working group of 22 states. CISA is the lead on this, and Connecticut Green Bank and IPC and Posigen are partnered on it. And so we've been talking to states, in depth about this model and seeing how we can help to promulgate this model elsewhere. Folks are really, impressed by what Connecticut's accomplished in terms of parity with LMI or beyond parity with LMI in communities of color, and also very impressed with the, kind of declining incentive model and financing, and yet still achieving those goals. So that's it, unless there are any questions.
Excellent.
Carrie, this is Matt. I just maybe a question or a comment. I don't know if you're aware, there's a pretty, really as intense an effort as I've seen in 25 years about the sort of structural impacts of zoning on communities to essentially exclude, certain demographics, people of color, and people, low income residents. And it's really gaining a lot of speed. I don't know if you're involved in any of that, but I wonder if there isn't an opportunity for you, and I'd be happy to help, to participate in some of the workshops that have been going on with state leaders to see if there's a way to build in some of these LMI solar strategies into the proposed, zoning changes that are being discussed.
Yeah, Matt, Kim Stevenson has been involved in those efforts through the Fairfield County Housing Association, or Kim, I don't know if you're on and can speak to that, but if there's more that we should be doing, yes, absolutely, let's connect on that.
Yeah, let's connect, because I think there's more. I mean, there's really a lot of who knows, this has happened before, but there is more support for this issue than I've seen. And I think, in part, what's happened with COVID has really been a wake-up call to a lot of communities about the lack of LMI housing.
Yes, affordable housing. And then in our work in other states, we've been approached by numerous land trusts who are with permanently affordable housing models to make them permanently green affordable housing models, which is also a very exciting sort of, so there's the zoning angle, and then there's the creation through community land trust model as well. That's great, Matt. Yeah.
Hey Matt, this is Kim Stevenson. So yeah, I sit on the steering committee of the Fairfield County Housing Alliance, which Melissa Kaplan-Macy from the Regional Plan Association and one of the subgroups of that steering committee is spearheading kind of a manual that they're putting together for towns, and really doing great work on that. So just would love to connect with you on that, with Carrie.
Yeah, please call me offline and I'll fill you in on whatever else I've seen going on. And I would love to work with you guys and really elevate this issue.
Excellent. One other comment I wanted to make, this is Brian, is the board last year in fiscal year 20, as part of our research and development budget, supported us to take a look at the transportation burden, which is the percent of household income spent on transportation related issues, so that we can begin to understand how we can focus our clean energy, clean vehicle kind of efforts specifically to LMI communities. It really builds from the excellent work of Brenda with the energy affordability gap. I saw a piece of that report, just stepping back up to Carrie's comment on loan performance and Posigen, where the report identified and actually calculated with looking at how much the participants are paying on lease rates and specifically how much those systems are generating. We have all the generation data and computed how much they're actually saving. So apparently on average, it's about $1,100 in energy energy costs that's being reduced for those participants, and that's of about a $1,400 energy affordability gap. So the Posigen program is really eating right into that energy affordability gap, and we want to keep doing that, but we also want to understand the transportation gap as well as we think ahead in the future. So stay tuned for that. We're still doing the research. Our hope is to probably bring that back to you soon and in the fall, but it was good to see that data point, Carrie.
Yeah, that was exciting. Yep.
Great. Carrie and Joe, thank you so much. Thanks for continuing to do such a tremendous job on managing these residential programs.
Thank you, Helen.
Excellent. All right, so we are going to turn our attention to the financing programs update. And we've got another team here that's going to provide us an update. Mackie is out on vacation this week, but we're going to have us kicked off with Nick. I think, Nick, you're on. Go ahead and work us through CPACE.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian. And good morning to Madam Chairwoman and as well as to the Board of Directors. So yes, I'm Nicholas Zuba, Senior Manager on the Financing Programs team. And so I'm happy to give you the recap of our performance of the CPACE program for fiscal year 2020. So as you'll note in the table up top, so out of our projects closed, we had a target for 56 projects this year. Ultimately, we ended up closing on 45 projects as a program. For our capital deployed target, we had $25 million slated as our target, in which we did exceed that goal by about $2.5 million. So that ultimate $27.5 million that you'll see in that target. And then basically for our clean energy deployed target, we had slated to do 7 megawatts, but ultimately we deployed 6.1 megawatts. So really, if we were to describe in the program, what took place this year, it really was the tale of two different fiscal years. So we had a first half that was very strong, which helped us get nearly close to meeting, obviously, two of those key high-end metrics that we do judge our performance by in terms of the projects and clean energy deployed, and even got us to the point of where we were able to exceed our capital deployed goal. For just, for context sake, we had closed 34 of our 45 projects. We deployed 17.5 million of our 27.5 million in capital deployed, and about 5.4 of the 6.1 megawatts of clean energy deployed, all in the first half of this fiscal year. So you could see that we were on a very good pace to be able to go and meet all of our targets for this particular fiscal year. But then when COVID-19 hit, that's what led to a major stunting of the growth and the progress that we were making. So if you just simply do the math in your head, you'll notice how much that our progress tailed off in the second half of the fiscal year due to basically the stay-at-home orders and the shutdown of businesses that were imposed by the state as a result of the COVID-19 outbreak. So a lot of property owners decided to pause on the projects that they were talking to us about. And as well as those that were already active in our pipeline, they too wanted to slow down the progress they were doing on their projects and to see how we were going to come out of the first wave of the COVID-19 outbreak in Connecticut. So that certainly had its impacts on our ability to meet all of our goals. And then just to the next slide here. So really, I think some important lessons that we probably can learn from this whole experience is that first, we had to anticipate everything. So the bottom line is that, while we couldn't obviously have foreseen a once in a century pandemic coming our way to impact our ability to get to our targets, it's going to have to cause our program to think in a little different way going forward about how we basically can develop different types of strategies and tactics that we could deploy at any point to be able to guard against any kind of existential challenge that could impact our abilities to meet our targets. And so this would allow us then to be on offense and to be proactive to help meet towards our targets instead of working in a defensive and reactive way that we've had to now do as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So this is something where I hope we can develop these ready-made plans and tactics that we can deploy at any point and have them at the ready so that we can then be able to go and guard ourselves against any of these existential challenges and when we're trying to meet all of our targets in the future. So that's certainly one sort of takeaway. The other in this case is that we continue to make progress on expanding our capital provider base in using our open market model of the CPACE program. So we had a second straight year of a strong interest from outside capital providers to want to onboard themselves to the CPACE program. And so, this was the single most amount of capital providers came into our program this year. It was 6 of them total who wanted to make use of the CPACE platform. But we've always been under the assumption that once a new capital provider wants to come into our market, we automatically would think they're going to bring projects to us for our review and approval. That has not worked out that way. Many of the capital providers have now told us that they want to just simply get onboarded into the program so that it can lead to future economic development opportunities and business development opportunities for them to go and provide their own funding for doing CPACE projects in Connecticut. So if anything, this will prime us, and it will give us the foundation really for, I think, major future growth of having outside capital providers do their own CPACE projects who can really scale up this program and get even more projects done across the entire state. So that would certainly be the hope when in partnering with these capital providers in the future. And that is pretty much my recap on the CPACE program for this fiscal year.
This is Tom Flynn. I have a question / comment on this, if I might.
Sure.
Go, Tom.
Thank you. Thanks. So I deal with a lot of commercial clients. I'm a management consultant, and I've been extremely busy during COVID. And one of the discussions, I also live in Fairfield County, and one of the discussions that's preeminent right now is the change in the work model, given the commuting issues and the close of offices. And the realization of most of my clients that they didn't lose near the productivity they thought they were going to lose from being at home. And a lot of businesses are now evaluating a work from home or at least partial work from home or hoteling concept, which will dramatically reduce the need for commercial real estate and probably dramatically adjust that market. Now, obviously, we don't know yet, but I don't know that your commercial real estate market is now going to be putting a whole lot of capital into their buildings right now. I think this pause could be for a long period of time as we understand what the true impacts of this is moving forward. So, my question or my comment would be, what have we seen since we've come out of this a little bit, and do we really anticipate at least in the next year or so, that CPACE is going to ramp back up to, maybe the interest levels that it had before, because I just don't see it right now.
Yeah, Tom, I think that's an excellent comment and question to have. And right, I mean, I think a lot of us in this program at this point are still unsure ourselves about where things are going to go over the next year. But I think, for what you just cited about maybe a fundamental change in how the workplace is managed and how it is done, I think that would really just kind of hone in on a particular sub market of basically the C&I greater market, that being office buildings, right? I can picture office buildings and those types of spaces being probably more dramatically
correct.
Agree. But we got to remember, C&I is such a huge umbrella of different types of little subsectors. We're talking about retail spaces, manufacturing, and all the other likes in this case. I mean, so there's going to be plenty still, I think, of opportunities out there that we can basically find, and contractors can go and certainly get those opportunities. That I think we still would have an active and certainly, robust CPACE market, even maybe without office maybe being in the picture so much. So I think we still have the ability to look around other some markets of the C&I space to be able to still get CPACE projects done. But I definitely see office being maybe impacted, but also too, I could think about it in another way. With offices maybe being largely closed, maybe that can get that landlord or certainly the person overseeing the building to now think about doing the improvements to a building in this case, because now there's nobody there. They could now potentially have more safety and soundness to get contractors in to do an audit, and then think about then doing the deployment of new energy improvements. That then if an employer wants to change their mindset eventually to go back to the way things were, they could maybe think about doing that. And now they would have a more energy efficient building, in which case to bring those occupants back into, that also is going to help with, I think, the health and the safety eventually of protecting those employees in the future. So that's also how I think about it.
I don't disagree with what you say. I think, number one, the two sectors that are going to be hit hard, if you believe what you see and what I'm hearing, are the office buildings, absolutely, but also retail. I think both of those areas are going to be hit. At least in the short term. Short term maybe being 24 months. And you're likely to see a pause on that market as it resets and that kind of the new normal shakes out, because we just don't know what it's going to be. And I just think the management of the program needs to adjust its expectations to be less certain and very fluid in the next 24 months. And you're really going to need to stay close to that market to understand exactly what's going on. Because I do know that companies are looking at all of this, and this hoteling concept and the like is really attractive to them for many, many reasons. So it's just going to be interesting to shake out. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think we temper our expectations, I think, on the goal setting at this point. But yeah, I'm sorry, Brian, do you want to make a point?
No, this is Bert Hunter here. Yeah, Tom, I certainly agree with your observations. I do want to add some additional context, though, that I think and I think your point about staying fluid and close to the market is spot on, because what I think we're also observing is a few things. With COVID, there's coming a big emphasis on health and safety in the market. And, that certainly for those commercial real estate, multifamily property owners that really want to use this as a necessary opportunity to really, provide better HVAC for their buildings, their residents and their customers and occupants of those buildings are going to be, looking for ways to finance that. The other thing is we have opportunities in the skilled nursing facilities area, which we've done a little bit of, but that's really kind of a nascent sector of the market that we could look at a little bit more. Again, we know how that area has been impacted by COVID, and they're looking to really change out and improve HVAC systems. So that's another area that's really that we could expand into. The other thing to keep in mind is our base of business is relatively small to a huge market. And I've been listening to a number of the regional banks reporting out on activity. Commercial real estate activity is coming back. It's amazing how resilient the market is, even though it is impacted. So it's a big enough market where I think we're going to be able to find those opportunities, work with those property owners that really want to, as Nick was addressing, improve their properties, notwithstanding the fact that there's going to be change, but maybe use this as an opportunity to get ahead of the curve. So for those reasons, I think that we're going to see continued activity in the market, but just in different places, perhaps, than what we've seen in the past.
Thank you.
Excellent. Great discussion. Why don't we move to an update from Louise? I think, Louise, you're there on the commercial solar PPA.
Hi, yep, Louise Della Pesca here from the finance team, and I look after the commercial solar PPA in collaboration with people from other departments within the organization, such as Mackie Dyke. So Mackie's not here, and I will take on this update. Okay, so headline figures here are in the table at the top of the slide, and I guess what jumps out immediately is the distance between the actual number of projects closed and the target projects closed, and then that feeds through to capital deployed and the clean energy deployed across to the right hand side of this table. I think this is not just a COVID thing. It's important to say that COVID has had a small impact on our work in commercial solar PPAs. So we've anecdotally been told about solar contractors laying off large percentages of their staff and having to slow down the installation schedules of new solar projects because of social distancing requirements when you're out on site doing work. And then more officially, we've had notifications from the utilities, the two utilities in Connecticut that we work with, where they have just said, work will be slower during COVID-19 work restrictions, and that has delayed things like renewable energy credit REC applications, as well as the final stage of solar installation, which is when you interconnect, which is a requirement to work with the utility. But having said that, I want to focus on some higher level observations here, which is general changes that we've seen in the Connecticut market for commercial solar PPAs and how we've really responded as an organization to those. I would say that, the past year, we have seen the evidence of a shift. There's less what you would call low-hanging fruit. So, commercial solar and Greenbank played a huge role in this. Commercial solar has become a lot more established in the state of Connecticut, which means that the projects that were there to be done have been done, and now it's a case of looking further, looking deeper for new projects. And we've also seen something really encouraging, which is more private sector project developers. So we're not the only game in town anymore by any stretch of the imagination. And there's other private sector, sometimes they want to partner with us, and sometimes they want to go it alone. So that our role within that changed market, we've had to be nimble and change, what we want to do in order to still deploy capital and to still fill a gap where there is one in the market. So the two kind of changes that we've made, I'm still on the previous slide, sorry. I'll wrap it up quickly. First of all, we've changed the way we operate. So we've taken a much more hands-on, active development role of projects. And this is where Mackie Dykes would be able to talk to this, really well, because him and his team have focused hard on playing the role of getting solar PPAs on state properties and also municipality property portfolios too. So by an active development role, I'm talking about, getting involved much earlier in the project development process, not being passive and waiting for developer partners to bring opportunities to us to finance, but instead being the party that is working with the eventual PPA customer. Huge amount of work has gone into the state solar PPA program, for example, because of the effort that has to go into developing contracts that the state can be comfortable with. And we also did an RFP to get the most competitive build cost for the state portfolio as well. So much more hands-on, takes much longer, has a longer timeline for these projects to come to fruition. And the second thing that we did is look at where a gap in the market is and where we can still deploy capital. We found that commercial solar debt is a product that we're really well placed to deploy. And though it's not reflected in any of the targets above, we did manage to arrange just under $6 million of secured debt facilities with private sector developers. Those are facilities that are secured by commercial solar PPA projects in the state. Next slide. Some lessons learned then. So asset management remains a key area of focus for us. It's easy to forget sometimes that 6 years of effort resulted in 20 megawatts of assets under management, which do not just exist in a silo. They require a lot of, love and attention. And we have focused hard in asset management, which has yielded a 7% production increase like for like across our portfolio, which is a good a good outcome for our asset management efforts. Another area of learning is around ITC Safe Harbor. So ITC, the investment tax credit, has entered its annual step down period now, so it gets a lower percentage each year. There's ways to do something called Safe Harbor, the tax credit, depending on when you commence building a new solar project. We had a very important learning this year that when we do plan to Safe Harbor a tax credit, either for one of our developer partners or financing partners, we have to ensure that a certain entity within the green bank, which is taxable, signs the contracts for that project. And the third thing was learning from the intense effort that has gone into being an active developer on the state solar program, how we could leverage that, and it's borne fruit in terms of taking those learnings from working with the state and developing a municipality project that mirrors it. So we call it the Solar Map Municipal Assistance Program, and that's allowing us to unlock small to medium-sized projects at municipalities, which, just like state projects, just faced a huge number of barriers against getting done. And that's my update. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
Okay, great. So continuing on with the updates here, we're going to turn it over to Kim, who's going to give us an update on multifamily housing. Kim.
Yeah, hi Brian and everyone. Thank you so much. So Kim Stevenson, I, like Joe and Carrie, was formerly at the Green Bank. I'm now at IPC, and while at the Green Bank, I developed and led our multifamily programs, which IPC continues to do on behalf of the Green Bank. So I'd just like to start by saying that we, in the multifamily housing programs, where we're primarily focused on properties that serve residents that are low and moderate income, we set our annual targets based on what is in our pipeline and anticipated to close in a given fiscal year. This is because deals often take a year or several years or more to close. So this fiscal year, based on what closed, we achieved our targets for our pre-development loans and our term loans. Overall, since the inception of the program in 2014, we've touched about 4.2% of all multifamily units in Connecticut that serve low and moderate income residents. Just like to mention here that this 4.2 number has held steady, even though the number of units we've touched has increased. I think that's a reflection of the fact that we've got an increasing number of folks that are becoming low and moderate income in the state of Connecticut. Overall, we funded and provided technical assistance to a mixed set of projects. 6 of these were follow-on investments in previously funded projects, and they included a mix of technologies, including solar efficiency and a fuel cell at the Cherry Street Lofts in Bridgeport. Go ahead to, if anyone has, I'm going to skip the health and safety loan program. If there are questions, I can answer them. A couple of things I would like to share here is that cooperatives and condos have become a really important sector for the multifamily program. They're distressed and deeply underserved sector in Connecticut. And through our loan programs and our technical assistance and our partnerships, not only are we facilitating energy improvements in these properties, but because of the level of distress, we're helping to preserve them as a critical affordable housing resource. And the work that the group's done over the years has been recognized nationally. And I think we've really figured out how to kind of crack the nut with condos and co-ops where the banking community is reticent to lend in, but we will. COVID-19 has slowed the multifamily program for sure. Owners and managers, particularly those owning and managing affordable housing, are really stretched thin, dealing with COVID and the residents and the health issues. And there's been real uncertainty about rental incomes and financial stability. That said, we do continue to see pipeline activity. We continue to work on some of these long-term projects that we've been supporting. And in terms of marketing, really strategically focusing on solar and the benefits of solar PPAs, particularly for nonprofits and municipal housing authorities, where they can take advantage of lower utility costs by going solar. And then just finally, although the market slowed because of COVID-19, we've always taken a really long-term approach to the market, where deals take longer than a year often to close. We spend a lot of time, like as Louise had just described, the PPA team is finding they have to do, providing deep and extended technical assistance to support customers in nurturing projects to a point where we can actually finance them. And that's just because of the complexities and limitations in this sector. So I will end it there and happy to answer any questions.
Kim, this is Lonnie. I know, one of the issues that we've always had in the community solar program and all of that to try to implement more solar for complicated communities like condo communities. And so you seem to be saying that you're really making headway in that sector.
Yeah, one of the things that we figured out how to do when we underwrite these loans is that we're doing this with Capital for Change, in partnership with Capital for Change, who helps us run the Lime Loan program, is that we can actually take a security interest in homeowner association fees. And there are ways of partnering with the homeowner association or the condo association to structure these deals in a way that we can feel comfortable financing them. And we haven't done a deal yet, but we're also looking at the possibility. We've got a large condo complex we're looking at where we would potentially work with a condo association, and we would be able to fund selective condos within the whole, the whole campus versus everyone. So that's detail, but that's kind of, sort of the gist of how we're looking at it and how we've been able to do it.
Yeah, I know it's much more complicated than everybody thinks. And the other thing I'm noticing is we around our train station here in my town, we had a couple of very ambitious projects that were going to be, I believe they were going to be condos. And now they've come back and they want to make them rental units. Is that something we're seeing because of what's happening with the COVID and the impact on finance?
I mean, a lot of the projects we see in the condo and co-op sector are the more distressed properties that have a harder time finding financing elsewhere. So the bigger issues that we're dealing with is they're just kind of being taken out of the affordable housing kind of bucket. Co-ops in particular, yes, we've seen that, and we've seen a trend in that.
Okay, that's back to Nick's anticipate everything thesis. Thank you. Any more questions or comments? We move on to the next item.
Excellent. Yes, so we are going to move on to agenda item 6A. We're going to get into the investment recommendations. And this is with regards to the open request for proposals framework. We talked about this in December, in January, and we're going to, Bert, I'll turn this over to you. Feel free to introduce Desiree however you'd like to handle.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I think I'll handle this this morning as we're moving things along. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Bert Hunter here. Just to refresh the board's memory, the board approved proposals for the Green Bank to establish an open and rolling RFP program in January. The January resolutions are up on the screen there, and the operating procedures were adjusted to accommodate the open RFP. And at the bottom of the screen, you will note that we have emphasized that it states that if the board of directors approves an open competitive process of selection and award with established criteria to encourage the investment and deployment of clean energy sources in Connecticut, such award will not be considered a strategic selection, and the additional requirements for a strategic selection shall not be required. So we set about to create the open RFP program document, which we circulated to the board in order to establish this criteria. Next slide, please, Brian. And so the criteria really falls around several items. The first thing is we wanted to keep eligible technologies broad. Really, you know that in the past we have focused on items that are commercially viable. We want everything to be commercially viable. We want good business models to be brought forward to the Green Bank. But there are some proposals that are that can demonstrate viability in other ways, sometimes through a well-documented feasibility study, or there have been pilot programs that have been established that where there's clearly a market where impact and clean energy objectives can be achieved. So we want to be open to those things, not to say that we're going to, fill the pipeline with those types of transactions, but we want to at least have a look. And as we have done in the past, we'll put those through a rigorous screen that we'll walk through today. The second item is with clean energy goals. Obviously, it's got to fit, with our comprehensive plan and our overall strategy to build toward Connecticut's clean energy future, as well as to keep an eye on public health outcomes and jobs and economic impact, which we have demonstrated that we've been able to achieve in the past. Lastly, on this slide, financial impact. We want to do transactions that will attract other capital, that brings other capital with it. We don't want to stand there alone. Sometimes we will be a front runner. We will step in with the feeling that based on conversations with other capital that yes, this seems like it has the underpinnings of a solid program, but sometimes we'll need to get it off the ground, particularly with other sources of equity capital that would come along. Next slide, please. Continuing on with the criteria, we're going to be looking at the various qualifications of the proposers. What kind of corporate structure are they? How long have they been in business? What's their team experience like? What is their specific experience with the projects that they are bringing forward? It's not unusual to see teams with various disciplines bring projects to the Green Bank, but they coalesce around an idea. And, the clean energy space is still expanding in terms of not only technology, but really business models. And we want to be receptive to those. But we also want to keep an eye on the team's track record. Have they been successful? What have they done in the past? And because that's going to tell you a lot about the possibilities for success in what they're bringing forward in their current proposal. What's their financial strength? Do they have other sources of funds that they're bringing along? Who have they talked to? We want to know all of that about these developers. Or are they coming to us on a shoestring and they really don't have the wherewithal to move projects along? On project scope, I put it in these terms. What's the big idea? What are you really trying to achieve here? What's the scope and scale? We're all about impact, so tell us about that. What's the system design? What kind of equipment is involved? If that is a part of the idea here. What's the business model? Let's look at some projections. Something that we've been focusing on very intently with projects that do involve equipment and performance is O&M. What's the plan for that? Other relevant information might include an independent engineering report, about the technology, or a feasibility study, as I mentioned earlier. And finally, what's the clean energy and economic impact, and how are we going to go about measuring that impact and being assured that these proposals will achieve the objectives that the Green Bank has for the Connecticut marketplace. Next slide, please. And then we'll put it through an evaluation screen of being able to meet the Green Bank goals, which you see there just at a high level. Green Bank essentiality. We're going to focus on this because we're very careful to want to encourage other capital into the market. And we also don't want developers to be lazy, to look at the Green Bank as just, an easy pool of funds that they can go after. How much have they really tested the market of capital for their concept? Who have they talked to? Put us in touch with those people. We'll start a conversation if we think the idea has legs, and that's going to be part of the process as well. Project feasibility. That's going to be a major factor here. We make investments, we lend money, we're a financing shop. This is not a grant operation. So we want to be sure that the project will be successful, that the Green Bank will be able to not only achieve its goals, but will also get a return of capital as well as a return on that capital. Project replicability. Hopefully these are not one and done type of transactions, that there will be a potential for replicability in Connecticut and beyond, so that we can help these ideas get legs in other markets. Next, please. We'll look at it through a project timetable lens. And what are the barriers? Are there any regulatory barriers, permits, etc., that could stand in the way? So we'll have to assess that. We've got a lot of experience with this, with working on anaerobic digesters, our hydro facilities, which tend to be a bit more problematic in terms of setting project timetables. And we, as you know, hearing Louise speak earlier, that we have considerable experience in solar, where those milestones and guidelines are well established and straightforward. Relevant experience. So again, hitting on this, we're going to really focus in on the ability of these teams to really bring the project along. References, we will be delving into where they've done business before and peer into that experience and reference group. And we're going to look for red flags. Obviously, we don't want anyone who's tied up in either litigation or consumer protection issues. Those would obviously not be good for us to step into, so we'll have to do our due diligence there. Next slide, please. And that's the framework. It was expansively explained in the documents that were sent to the board, and it boils down to these two simple resolutions, which I lay for the board, and happy to take any questions.
Any questions, board members, or comments? Bert, this is Lonnie. I really like it that there's it's discouraging the lazy approach to development, and looking for developers who are actually going to bring something to the party. And
right. Thank you. We've actually done that before, and I'll tell you, we've been approached, and I'll just take a few seconds to explain. We've been approached in the past on transactions where clearly there has been no need for the Green Bank to be involved. These are they've been AAA backing of off-takers and long-term contracts, and we just say, look, you really don't need the Green Bank. We'll introduce you to some commercial lenders, we'll give you some names. Why don't you go see what you can do there? And guess what? They got their transactions financed that way. So we can be helpful in many ways at the Green Bank. We don't have to always write a check, but we can direct these developers when we see the elements for something that's easily financeable. And we don't mind them coming to us, but as you point out, let's let them do a little bit of legwork and find some of that money on their own.
Okay. So,
Bert, this is Matt. So will we get? You'll come back to us, for example, with as this moves forward, the RFP with the actual criteria, or is it just what's in the documents on Board Effects now? The qualifications, for example.
Or you might be on mute, Bert.
Oh, sorry. Thanks, Brian. For any transaction, that's exactly right. It's following that document that was circulated, and it takes it out of the strategic selection box and puts it into the normal credit approval box, which is not to for any transaction less than $500,000 at the staff level, 500 to 2.5 million the deployment committee, and beyond that the up back to the board. So we would effectively be back into the board box if the transaction got to be larger than 2.5 million.
Okay.
Any more comments or questions?
No.
Okay, well, we need to approve these agenda items, right? I'm going, wait a minute, I don't think we've approved it.
This is resolution 4.
Okay, so do I hear a motion to approve resolution number 4?
So moved, Eric.
That Eric?
Brenda, I second.
This is Steve Meyer, second.
Okay. Any questions? Any, okay, so all in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Thank you. So then I see we need to approve resolution number 5. Yes?
That will be in a couple of agenda items.
Okay,
Lonnie.
so not yet. All right.
So right now we're going to, and we should probably move through this quickly, Bert and team, on the Green Liberty bonds. We wanted to just give the board an update on where we were because we have 2 other transactions that will need a review and approval from the board.
Right.
So Bert and I are going to tag team on the update, and Lonnie, feel free to jump on in here. So we had a very successful Green Liberty bond first inaugural offering. Bert is going to get into some of the details on that. We wanted to do a number of things. We wanted to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. Of course, we weren't able to time it given COVID, so we went through the whole March, April time period. Our underwriters did an excellent job of holding us until the market was ready, and Bert will give you some perspective there. We also wanted to recognize, because the bond was structured in such a way that it was modeled after the Series E war bonds of the 1940s. So we wanted to give citizens the ability to buy bonds and invest in projects that the Green Bank supports. So this is actually a commemorative certificate. Bert not only is creative with all our financing stuff, but he envisions marketing things as well. So this is Bert's design on the commemorative certificate that we're going to be sent to all the bond purchasers of the Green Liberty bond. So what is a Green Liberty bond? We designed it to have 3 features to it. So it's literally a subcategory of green bonds. So we all know that there are municipal investors, corporate investors, all those people are issuers around the world who are issuing green bonds. What we wanted to do was to create a subcategory of green bonds that does 3 things. If you do these 3 things, then you can be a Green Liberty bond. The first is that the use of proceeds need to go towards combating climate change. So they have to uphold the Paris Agreement. In our context, it's supporting clean energy projects, which mitigates greenhouse gas emissions. There may be others out there who want to use proceeds to fund adaptation and resiliency projects. So if they're using proceeds to combat climate change, great, then that's the first checkoff. The second is we wanted to make sure that these bonds are available to everyday citizens. So typically, these green bonds are made available to institutional investors only, insurance companies, pension funds, the like. We wanted to make sure that these offerings are available to citizens because, as you will see, they want to buy them. And that means that the denomination value of the bonds has to be no greater than $1,000, and we want to try to get that number down. So second is it has to be retail accessible. And then third, because it is available to retail purchasers, we need to ensure consumer protections, that the use of proceeds is going towards climate change. So they have to be independently certified and verified. And Eric at our March or April board meeting, I think it may have been our April board meeting, we got programmatic certification from the Climate Bonds Initiative that what we support as a green bank will enable combating climate change and the reduction of GHGs. So certification and verification. So if you do these three things in a bond issuance, then you can call them a green Liberty bond. We created a great BondLink website that had all the resources for people who wanted to find out more information about what a green Liberty bond is. We had really great outreach from our marketing team in terms of raising the level of awareness of what this was. All the key industry magazines, communication channels covered this story, and it was really interesting. They compared this to a war bond. All the things that we designed the program after, they carried the message there. I can tell you that we got so many inquiries from people about, can they do it? The Coalition for Green Capital reported to me that their emails just got flooded after we sent this note out of people wanting to know what this was about. And Lonnie and I can get to that here in a second. So our Green Liberty Bond was based on the revenue streams from our renewable energy credits from the RCIP. But what we were hearing, and you all are familiar with this, but what we were hearing from the market was the forest industry and those who are trying to preserve forests saying, this is a really interesting structure. We want to issue voluntary carbon offsets to protect forests and manage forests. We have buyers, large buyers. Think of the largest of the large corporations who have climate change targets, who are willing to buy carbon offsets out to 20 years to reduce their own greenhouse gas emission footprint. So literally the forest industry came to us, as well as a number of states, to say, how can we replicate what you've done here in a REC compliance market with the utilities into a voluntary market for corporations that want to buy offsets? And of course, we have our very own electric vehicle restructuring, a voluntary offset that Matt has run. We talked a little bit about this last month in our board meeting as we looked at our new GHG offset target, specifically around recharging stations. One could envision aggregating all those systems, finding a buyer who's willing to purchase them out into the future, collecting those revenues today through a bond, and supporting more deployment of EV infrastructure. So it was really interesting to see how the market saw this innovation and wants to do more of it. I don't know, Lonnie, if you want to say anything here about, maybe our CSG call or anything before I transition it to Bert to talk further on the structure.
Just briefly, so the the National Conference of State Governments are very eager to get involved, and so we did a call with several legislators from not just New England states, but Maryland, New York. Was New York on? But it's just really clear that Connecticut has stepped way out in front on this, and all the work that the team has done to build in, a sense of security and not just the full faith and credit, but actually pinpointing where this money is going and the level of oversights. And I had one of the financial folks that I know in New York say they ended up buying $1 million worth because it meets all the criteria that their clients want. They want to be involved in doing something good. They want to get their kids and their grandkids off their back about not saving the planet. So those great little bonds that they're going to get, they're going to frame them. And so it's one of those things that it's been done so well. It's very exciting going forward. And as I said, legislators from other states want to figure out how to create complementary programs that'll work for them as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Lonnie. So let me transition this to Bert. But before I do, I wanted to just say that, you're seeing a slide here around, this is really like it takes a village. There was just an extraordinary amount of work that was put into this, but also heart and thought. And, I don't know, in this COVID-19 time, how to acknowledge and recognize all the people and get together and assemble and celebrate. but you all should know, like the Green Bank team, Mike, Bert, our legal, our marketing, like across our RSIP, across the organization, had their hands in this transaction. So it fundamentally represents the values and the heart of the organization. And of course, we had a number of external advisors. So, but let me turn it to Bert, and Bert's going to go into some detail.
Sure. Thanks, Brian. And I just wanted to add that not up there on that list is an entire working group. We had representatives from the Treasurer's Office, from the Office of Policy and Management. So there were a number of helping hands, and thanks also to our board chair who participated in our online webinars that help promote the bonds. So you can move to I don't think we need to go through. I just wanted to provide recognition to all these people who did participate. Our bond counsel, actually our financial advisor, Lamont Financial Services, Bob Lamb, has just been fantastic throughout. Bruce Chudwick at the firm of Shipman and Goodwin, providing ever valuable advice as bond counsel. Our underwriters, Ramirez and Steeple, we paired them, for a reason. Ramirez for their institutional strength and their innovation. Steeple, also innovative, but with a strong retail network, particularly in Connecticut, that proved valuable, as I'll explain in the next couple of slides. So all of these, as well as our independent engineers, a climate bonds initiative folks, to verify the greenness of these bonds, all of this worked to our advantage when we went to market. Next slide, please. So this is where we ended up with a total of just under $17 million in bonds, 16.795 million to be exact. This is more than 1.1 million more, is about 1.1 million more than where we were at the beginning of June. That's the benefit of falling interest rates, allowed us to get a little bit more out of the bonds. So we're going to be able to put that extra $1 million in proceeds to good use in the RSIP Shrek program. And these are the interest rates that resulted, but where the underwriters came out with those ultimate figures was to really do a spread analysis versus the U.S. Treasury market, which I said has interest rates had benefited from a decline from early June into the period when we were marketing the bonds in mid-July. And the spreads that they, the amount of interest spread that they put on top of the federal security to come to the yields that were offered in the market ranged from about 0.85% to a high on the long bond of 2.1%. So it made for a very attractive offering. So attractive that individuals on the first day of the offering accounted for 74% of retail orders, and with the balance from professionally managed retail accounts such as private wealth managers and bank trusts. So total retail orders exceeded 9.9 million overall, but 9.3 million came in on day one, and just about 5 million of those orders were usable, meaning that they weren't lost to excess bids. And if we look at the next slide, you will see what I'm talking about. This is the really represents pretty much the end of the first day. It's actually 10 a.m. on the institutional day. We broke the offering of the bonds into a retail offering period on the first day where only Connecticut and national retail were available to place bids on their orders for the bonds. So you see here that in the first two maturities, the 2021 bond and the 2022 bond, heavily oversubscribed, more than 4 times, and in the 1 year in the 2021 bond. But so that's what I mean by usable orders, because every order over 100% gets pretty much spilled. You can't use it. They can't transfer that order into a different maturity unless the bidder says that they're willing to, or the order maker is willing to go into a different maturity. So by the end of the first day, it was a 30% was subscribed by those orders, roughly $5 million, and then we were into the institutional phase. What our underwriters told us about this is that this was a very unusual amount of retail order activity. It's very unusual to see a turnout of individual investors and Connecticut residents specifically to make these direct purchases as opposed to having institutions buy on behalf of large groups of individuals. So then on the second day, where we see here the institutions came into the marketplace and having so many bonds pre-sold to retail investors really bolstered a favorable supply-demand dynamic for this offering. And almost the entire, as you see here, almost the entire 2027 bonds were taken by one institutional ESG investor. So we got a lot of appeal from the ESG market. And after a further yield adjustment, if you look at the 2035 bonds to the far right, you'll see that blue bar that's entirely taken nearly by one institutional money manager based in Connecticut. So we were really pleased with the outcome of that. So that you'll see that by 1:15 on the second day and the institutional day, we were 85% sold out on these bonds. The rest of the bonds were then taken into inventory by the underwriter. It says they're 2,534,000 in the red, in the blue bar to the right. So that was taken into inventory by the underwriters, and as of Monday, there were precisely 2 bonds left. And I had to ask for clarification because I said, do you mean that there are 2 maturities left? And the underwriter said, no, there are exactly 2 $1,000 bonds left. So they really cleared those out in a hurry. I can't tell you how much of a success this really speaks to the efforts of the entire team in clearing these bonds, getting this Green Liberty Bond program off to such a healthy start. Next slide, please. So key takeaways from our perspective are we achieved our goals, resoundingly so. We reached Connecticut investors. That was our number one objective. We reached ESG investors. If you'll remember back to our asset-backed security issuance last year, which went to one investor, we were rather disappointed that we didn't get more interest from ESG investors. We reached institutional investors more generally. So we went from one investor last year to a multitude of investors this year. Our research, our surveys were confirmed. All the work that our marketing department, hats off to the marketing team, really were confirmed. So that research paid off and really directed us and gave us confidence that we were heading in the right direction. Our marketing with our own mail list paid off. So getting that information out into the marketplace, having those webinars, that paid off. And Brian and Eric had an interview with the with the Bond Buyer magazine, which was a podcast, which if you haven't heard is just fantastic. So all of that was put out there. What I call it a world-class team. we put in a number of hours, and Brian Garcia was just masterful in terms of really providing overall leadership in this area, and really thankful for all the hours that everyone put in. We achieved a cost of capital which on a dollar for dollar basis was just incredible. We saved at least 100 basis points below what we achieved in the ABS market on an adjusted basis, meaning if you had gone to the ABS market this year versus last year, obviously with interest rates having fallen, you would have paid less. But we estimate that that benefit is, we beat it by at least 100 basis points inside of what could have been achieved in the ABS market. And the issuance cost of going the municipal route saved us at least 50%, and it'll be even more as we replicate and we get that machine well oiled. The true interest cost was about 2.61%, all in TIC, including issuance cost 2.92 versus the ABS last year at 5.95. So really down by 50%, which is just fantastic. And our final takeaway is investors want more green Liberty bonds. It's very strong retail demand in the short maturities, and we could even see an issuance of green bonds before the election. The election is going to be a crazy time, so if we're going to do it, we're going to have to try to time it right. But we might be back to the board in September with a request that we go to market pretty soon. So next slide, please. And back to you, Brian. You can wrap it up. Thank you.
Excellent. Bert, thank you for that. Yeah, I don't need to go through these points. Bert hit them all in the detailed description that he just gave. I guess the only point I wanted to raise is a lot of the fun that we had along the way. So we did take the World War II model of propaganda and all the posters that you might recall from getting Americans out to buy war bonds into this. So we had a series of posters. This is the Democracy in America poster, featuring de Tocqueville and a beacon, and really what de Tocqueville saw in New England. You could see some of our favorite friends there, Gina McCarthy, Greta, and a number of others if you kind of look into it. But we had inclusive prosperity. We had one on Yankee ingenuity that included Teddy Roosevelt, Eleanor Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln, all who had impacts on Connecticut and clean energy in Connecticut. So we were telling those stories from the position of Connecticut is an innovative state, and as Brian Farnan I think would say, we punch above our weight. So it was just an extraordinary effort of the team. Worked really, really hard, but like so cool to see it. And we're out there leading again and just driving. In this case, trying to open up the access for all citizens to a bond market where they can build wealth, and they can do that by investing in projects that confront climate. So just a job well done by the team, and looking forward to keep going.
This is Lonnie. Are there any questions or comments or pre-orders for the next issuance?
This is Matt. Congratulations, everybody. It's great. And the one other thing I would put there on the benefit that we talked about early on is these individual investors are now sort of invested in the green bank. So, we always need to think about building our constituency, because at the legislature, having these sort of active friends, people who know what we do, can add value and give us protection when we have difficult times and things we need to protect up there. So I think that's just another huge benefit in addition to the sort of democratization of this fund and letting people essentially get a kind of community solar. So great job.
All right, so we have two transactions that we need to move through in just a little over 10 minutes. If we could move to our USDA loan application, and I think we're going to turn this over to Matt Masunas to kick us off, and Bert will weigh in as needed.
Hey, can you hear me?
Perfect, Matt.
Yes.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. President and Madam Chair, and good morning, everybody. We'll linger on this slide showing basic loan terms. I won't read it, but just to let members know how we got here. not spending long, but it was a long time coming, seeking low-cost federal capital to support clean energy deployment in Connecticut. And that includes capital that's flexible, and in this case is available for relending at higher but still attractive rates, thus supporting our sustainability plan. We began exploration in 2015, 2016 with USDA's Rural Utility Service. At the time, their programs were more focused on utilities, but they sought to expand their vast lending authority to better facilitate access for new borrowers. So they established and improved on what you see here, the Rural Energy Savings Program. In more recent years, we secured support from the congressional delegation for designating the Green Bank as a borrower. We introduced state legislation to bolster our eligibility case, and in 2019, we succeeded in getting that eligibility independently from Rural Utility Service. And we also acquired from USDA a rural determination for the state, which is another early required step. So although funds under this program are aimed toward rural communities under 50,000, which is still most of Connecticut, the most recent Farm Bill, they liberalized those terms and made it easier to use funds statewide within reason. And more recently, we've worked with the Green Bank Consortium and the Environmental and Energy Study Institute, and they've supported connecting green banks to USDA because they want green banks to begin accessing these congressionally appropriated funds. Next slide, please. So we submitted a letter of intent in May for this year's round of RESP. We requested $10 million, and we were invited back to apply into that full amount of funding, which is great. We indicated in our letter of intent that we can envision using those funds within these listed structures to secure lower cost capital, whether it's CPACE, solar PPA, shared clean energy facilities, the Smarty loan, standing up and on bill repayment program. We're now perhaps even using the rolling RFP for innovative proposals. Slide, please. So the application package for RESP, this involves several pieces of work. The more intensive ones, probably the financial forecast, implementation plan, and the monitoring and verification plan. These materials are due in September, and we're targeting early September for submission. The Rural Utility Service, they've distributed grant funding in Connecticut before, a program called REAP, but there are no legacy borrowers of loan funds in the state. And we've always been told that establishing that status it would be powerful in accessing future funds in a more streamlined way from USDA. Once a borrower, always a borrower, including in your jurisdiction. Slide, please. And so with that, Bert and I are happy to take questions, and we'll respectfully request your approval of Board Resolution number 5 to include in our application. Thank you.
Any questions from board members? Okay, do I hear a motion to approve resolution number 5?
This is Matt, so moved.
Second?
Second, Benu.
Benu. Thank you, Benu. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. It's approved.
Excellent.
Wonderful, thank you.
So now we're moving to agenda item 6D, which is our Shrek warehouse, and we'll turn it to, I think, Mike. Mike, you're going to do this?
Yes, I will, Brian. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So for this Shrek warehouse extension, just as a quick recap, last year the board approved this credit facility, which is backed by the third tranche of Shreks. And this warehouse was similar to the one we had before that was based on tranche 1 and tranche 2 before their securitization under the asset-backed security. But it was an improvement as we turned it into a revolving credit facility that allowed multiple draws and repayments as needed by the Green Bank, as opposed to before we drew it down and we had to keep the money outstanding. We couldn't return it. So this warehouse serves a couple of very important purposes. The first is that it's a revolving credit facility that enhances the Green Bank liquidity, which gives us a flexible source of capital that we can draw on for whatever purpose, whether it's a large one-time investment or a couple of large C-PACE deals, but also to pay down those funds when they aren't needed. And that helps us minimize any negative carry for us, negative interest carry or having dead cash on hand. Second, it's a bridge to a securitization that it's a long-term placement like the Green Liberty bonds we just did. This bridge is needed because we found that the tranches need, at least half a year, if not more, of operating history to really be optimized. The engineer review of the first 3 tranches we did, they sort of found that in that first year, there's sometimes bugs and hiccups with revenue meters, and that can cause outages. And if you just take those first few months and use that as the basis of your performance, that can have an outsized impact on the measurements and therefore the projections that the engineer bases their analysis on. So you really want to give the tranche a little bit of time to season, and this facility allows us to both to monetize those revenues while also allowing them time to season and to optimize, and then we can use that and as the basis for our securitization. And this would be our third warehouse, either renewal or new warehouse with Liberty and Webster, which is really great as it's really helping to solidify our relationships with these 2 Connecticut banks. This increased contact has meant greater collaboration here and in many other transactions that we do at the Green Bank. On the next slide, we have the structure diagram showing how Tranche 4 acts as the collateral for the warehouse. And it's important to note here that we will be giving up Tranche 3, which is going to serve as the collateral for the Green Liberty bonds. And the warehouse lenders are comfortable with this swap, as Tranche 4 is a good deal larger than Tranche 3. It's almost at 55 megawatts, which is about 30% larger than Tranche 3. And the pricing will be at $47 per Shrek versus $48, so not a huge drop in pricing there. And then the Green Bank will continue to provide a guarantee of the repayments under the advance. And so in terms of the collateral, we feel like we're in good shape there. And in terms of the economics and the pricing, it's largely similar to before. I guess the major difference is that while the spread over LIBOR is still at 2.4%, due to sort of the COVID-related drop in LIBOR itself, the warehouse lenders, not unlike many other banks that we've dealt with, are requiring a LIBOR floor of 50 basis points. And so there's a effective increase of about 30 basis points as LIBOR is hovering around 0.2%. That said, we're trying to minimize any unnecessary fees. So we're shifting the facility size down from 14 million to 10 million. And so that'll shave some of the costs there. But also the lenders have a sort of soft approval to go back up to 14 million if need be, and then have indicated that they wouldn't see a problem going back to their committee to go up to 20 million if we requested it. And so altogether, we think it's, the economics of it is still compelling, and we recommend that the board approve this amendment for the warehouse and the swapping of collateral. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board?
So, Madam Chair, if I might, I do want to point out, and I'm not sure if Brian Farnan is on the phone, but we do have a slight modification to the resolutions that we need to address.
Okay.
Brian, are you there?
Yeah,
if
I'm
not,
here,
I can take it.
Do it regarding the Shrek warehouse?
Yes. The need for the resolution to cover the sale and purchase agreement?
Correct. So we could simply just add in a language, one additional resolve to that effect. You want to read it only because I'm just in.
Oh, sure. I'll handle it. I actually circulated the language to you and Brian at the head of the call. So we'll need an additional whereas clause, and for the benefit of the board, I will just read it. The reason we need this is because the Shreks, as Mike pointed out, the Tranche 3 Shreks are in the SPV to provide security for Webster and Liberty right now. But they're going to give up that security because we're giving them tranche 4 in its place. And they'll release their security interest in tranche 3 so that under the indenture, which we will close on the 29th of July, we'll be able to provide that to the trustee, tranche 3 to the trustee to secure the Green Liberty bond. So last year, we sold from the Green Bank to the SPV the tranche 3 Shreks. Now, the Green Bank has to reacquire those Shreks from the SPV, from Warehouse 1, that SPV. So I'll read the whereas clause and then describe the modification to the resolution. We'll have an additional whereas clause that will read, whereas in order for the Green Bank to reacquire for the benefit of the Green Liberty bond be issued on July 29, 2020, the tranche 3 2019 Shrek be conveyed to the company being the Warehouse 1 SPV, to provide security for the loan. Green Bank and company must enter into a sale and purchase agreement, the sale and purchase agreement, in quotes, to return the tranche 3 2019 Shrek to the Green Bank. So that's the additional whereas clause. And then we would have 2 additional resolutions. One, resolve that the board hereby authorizes, directs, ratifies, and approves the Green Banks and companies entering into the sale and purchase agreement. And an additional resolution to say, resolved that the board hereby authorizes, directs, ratifies, and approves the Green Banks and companies' execution, delivery, and performance of the sale and purchase agreement. And then there's a slight modification to the resolution which allows Brian, myself, and Brian Farnan to do what we need to do as authorized signatories to sign the agreement. So we just add the sale and purchase agreement to that laundry list of documents and down below. So those are the changes.
I'll be happy to, Bert. So in resolution 6, we're adding the whereas clause in order for the Green Bank to reacquire for the benefit of the Green Liberty bonds.
I just read.
Okay, you read it?
Yeah, I already read it. So I just explained it to the board. So we're good, I think, Brian.
I have not slept yet since last night, so I apologize for that.
No, that's quite okay. I've got your back.
I like it, buddy.
Okay, Madam Chair, back to you.
All right, thank you. So I'm looking at process here. Do we need an amendment to add this, or do we just go ahead and
we were just doing a motion to revise the resolution as provided to the board members as provided by Bert Hunter, and then we would just update the minutes to include that revision to the resolution.
Okay, good. So do I hear a motion to do what was just said?
So moved, John Harity.
Oh, hi, John.
Hi.
Do I hear us?
I guess, am I late? What time does the meeting start?
Some might say
you came just in time.
Just in time. as you often are, John.
Yeah. The meeting never starts until you're here. I'll second. This is Matt.
Do I hear a second?
Yeah, this is Matt.
I think you got it from Matt.
Oh, we did. Okay, good. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Good. We all weighed in. Opposed? Abstain?
I'm sorry. There was somebody who was saying something.
Benu?
Either an
Was that you?
abstention or
No,
maybe
I
it was
just
a
said
late
aye.
aye.
You said aye. Oh, good. All right. Excellent. Okay. So the motion, the amended motion is approved. And other business.
Thank you very much.
I have to
Excellent.
say, it's Lonnie again. I really applaud Liberty Webster's. I mean, they've been very enthusiastic and committed to this, so that's great.
Yeah, they've been very good to work with. I'll pass that along, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Excellent. So just wrapping up here, just in terms of some other business, we wanted to report out and check out your board effect documents. They're really kind of cool background. We got these late to you. We got these yesterday, but a couple things we wanted to report out on. So the House approved Moving Forward Act. It's likely not going to pass, but within it is the $1.5 trillion, I would say, green infrastructure bill. Passed on July 1st. Included within that act is the $20 billion Clean Energy and Sustainability Accelerator, which is the National Climate Bank Act. They didn't include bank in there because the Banking Committee would have had to have opined on the usage of the term bank in it. So Congresswoman Dingell, who we were on a webinar during the summer advocating for the National Climate Bank, moved a resolution to amend the infrastructure bill on the floor to include this accelerator, and it included it. So this is, a large part of what we've been a part of with our colleagues, Reed Hunt, Jeff Shub, Alex Craigie of the Coalition for Green Capital. So it now moves forward for debate in the Senate. I was thinking about this last night, back in 2009 when the Waxman-Markey bill passed with the cap and trade bill, which didn't make it through the Senate. This is kind of an important moment for green banks because it's kind of stood up, and I've seen some press recently, and a lot of the talks about clean energy are now around a national climate bank. So kudos to the Coalition for Green Capital, and kudos to Connecticut for leading the way in terms of demonstrating how we can mobilize private investment towards a green economy. So we'll see what happens in the Senate. And then secondly, we, as you may know, Connecticut and Governor Lamont is a part of the United States Climate Alliance. We are one of 25 states from around the country whose governors support the Paris Agreement. We are still in. There are some Republican governors in there, a lot of Democratic governors in there. We worked with the USCA over the summer to put together a green stimulus letter to Congress. And I can report that that letter was submitted this week to Congress on behalf of the USCA, including the only new program beyond the expansions of existing programs that would include the National Climate Bank. So which I guess what that means is that all 25 governors of these states support the legislation for a National Climate Bank. What's interesting about that is we've taken all of our lessons learned and actually broadened the climate bank beyond clean energy and mitigation and included a couple of things. One is stressing the importance of a just transition and livable wage. Secondly, that the National Climate Bank address vulnerable communities. And third, that the funds can also be used beyond mitigation and clean energy to support adaptation and resiliency. So the protection of forests, the conserving of land, coastal protection and resiliency. So just building on the Green Bank model in Connecticut and broadening it to other environmental areas. So I just wanted to report that out. Take a look at the documents. Again, Connecticut helping under the radar here, lifting these efforts nationally.
Again, any questions or comments from board members? No, hearing none. Unless I'm reading this wrong, that concludes our business? Or do we have another agenda item?
That's right, Madam Chair, just the adjourn.
Oh, agenda item adjourn.
Lonnie, before we adjourn.
Yes, John.
This is John Harradine. I just wanted to apologize. I thought the meeting was at 11 for some reason, and I hate missing these. So I really want to apologize to the board for not being there on time.
Oh, well, that can happen. We're all multitasking here, so we certainly understand, because I think everybody has a lot of responsibilities, and but you showed up just in time, so this was great. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Any seconds?
Second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed and desperate to hang around? Okay. We are adjourned. Have a great
Well
weekend,
done.
everybody.
Have a nice
Great.
weekend.
Have a nice
Thank you.
weekend.
Take care, folks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.